So before we open up for some questions, I would like the panelists to reflect on a couple of issues. And that is, we have seen in the MDG era that there has been a kind of increased focus on measurable indicators, targets, and so on. And yes, and if you also see the current SDGs, which is about ensuring healthy lives, if you saw all the indicators they're presenting, this kind of demands a functioning health system. And I was just wondering if you can reflect a little bit on how we can see the future in this area of measurable goals and indicators, which has not really been in favor of health system strengthening, and the focus on the SDGs that really demands that, and how can we really balance that in the future? And the other thing I would like you to reflect on is also how we can ensure that sexual and reproductive health and rights is placed firmly on the agenda. It's not going to happen what we see with the MDGs, where it was reduced to maternal health and even further reduced to skilled birth attendance. So I don't know who you would like to start. Perhaps Yashodhara, I know you're going to leave any minute. So.
Yeah, I think as I already mentioned in my presentation, I feel that with all the gains that we did accomplish through the kind of very limited focus on the MDGs, we did end up, in a sense, simplifying the challenges of development in today's world. And as a result, not only did we lose out on the complexity, we kind of created an overarching discourse that these are the only problems worth looking at. And I think we tended to limit research and investigation and, of course, measurements to just these aspects. And so if you look at the amount of literature that has come out of just this very narrow focus of the MDGs and the kind of the realms of experience that have been left completely out of the ambit of knowledge production, then you realize it is an injustice, because the MDGs also spawned this whole research industry, and which is just, that whole metrics in which I'm sure many young people like you also became part of that whole machinery. It's all about just measuring and ensuring that, there are results. So I do believe that we need to leave space beyond just the goals, and to realize that there are so many other things that need looking at. And as I said, it's not just strengthening the health systems, it's also looking at the whole accountability question, the rights and the quality questions. These are the dimensions that we need to look at. And as I said, the ICPD told us that sexual and reproductive rights and health are not just about health systems. There are a lot of other rights that are involved. I did mention that, bodily integrity, agency, autonomy, these are implicated in the full enjoyment of, SRHR. So we need to go beyond sort of the narrow metrics. We also need to go beyond then making health systems the new question. It's not that. It's also social relations beyond the health system. So I'm just looking at developing more complex approaches to measurement, to research. And I really hope that, the next generation will have that, broader perspective.
Yeah, so I want to build a bit from that. And unfortunately, my presentation, I had a I spent a lot of time talking. And so I wanted to say this, and it builds from what you're saying, and it's in the way that, so the post-2015 development agenda is supposed to define what development means. And what does that mean? And I think a good question for ourselves to ask ourselves is, what's development? How is it defined? Is it by unsatisfied basic needs? Is it about GDP per capita? Because when I was in Manila a few weeks ago, I was doing this tour, and the guide says, we have a lot of money now, so why are we not a developed country? So that's what people think, that money is development. So we really need to be critical, because if we just go with the flow, this is a very complex movement and process. And just trying to catch up with it and to follow it, it means that we're entering that machinery and that way of thinking. And there are very, very good examples in developing countries that are super interesting. For example, Bolivia with the whole living well principle. And not just living well amongst ourselves, but it's just how you live well in a community with the environment and with Mother Earth. So those kinds of progress and thinking, we need to really look into that. And I'm sometimes a bit pessimistic because, for example, when the Alma-Ata Declaration came out, it talked about redefining the world economic order. So it's not about sexual reproductive rights, and it's not only about health systems. And it's not about counting words in a declaration to see how many times they said youth, or they said sexual rights, or sexual health and reproductive rights. It's not about that. It's about the structure of the society and the development model that we're in, that it's reproducing inequalities. We have improved, yeah. But really, are we really changing the structures that have taken us to where we are today?
I suppose what I'd quite like to discuss a little bit today would be actually universal healthcare for all. I know that many people think that this isn't a possibility, but I truly believe that it should be a reality. It shouldn't be that some people have access to healthcare and some people don't, depending on where you're born, which country, which part of the country. If we look at West Africa, where my research was held, for example, I think there's been estimates that the amount of money they've used in trying to tackle this Ebola epidemic has been roughly 3 times the amount they would need to actually have healthcare for every single person in each of those countries. So if we as a global community can actually provide enough money to help these countries in this crisis, why could that money actually not have been directed at perhaps ensuring that there were functioning good health systems and universal access to healthcare for each of those people in those countries before this epidemic became such a crisis? It didn't need to get to that stage. So, that's.
Thank you. Any questions?
Hi, how many questions can I ask? 2 is okay? Yeah? Okay, I'm Marushma, I'm from University of Copenhagen. This first question is basically also to the panelists before, if you'd like to answer. When we talk about empowering women and informing women about their sexual and reproductive rights, how do we, considering the fact that these women are actually placed in countries where it's a male-dominant society, so how would you approach such a society? Because like Renzo said before, you can inform as much as you want and empower women as much as you want, but in the end you're sending them back to these societies where it's male dominant. So how do you make it sustainable? If you understand my question. The second one is specifically to Laura. One second. Yeah, you talked about how most of these women that are giving birth have different beliefs because of culture or religion. How would you provide life-saving information to these women? Have you thought about an approach to do that? Because it's something that's very rooted in their upbringing and culture. So a way to change that.
Shall I start then, maybe? Thank you very much for that question. It's a very good question. It's something I've been asking myself a lot since doing my research out in Sierra Leone. I don't think that there's one straightforward answer. I think part of the beauty about this world is the fact that we are so diverse, that we have so many thoughts and beliefs about things. But I do think beliefs change and opinions change. So I think that if anything is implemented to try and alter beliefs and also the actions from it, I think there needs to be time to see if these things can change. For example, in Sierra Leone, they have a lot of the secret societies where nearly all the women, to go from being a child to becoming a woman, they undergo. And there have previously been
implementations where, as part of that process, they've tried to bring in sort of vaccinations or something that you might term from like the modern medical world and try and bring it into some of their cultural beliefs. So I would have thought maybe an approach where you're combining some of the cultural beliefs that might be seen as harmful and trying to adapt them. So rather than just dismissing that's stupid, that's nonsense, to try and understand where that beliefs come from. And I think that's particularly important when you try and put it into context. If someone grows up in a village and everyone in this village believes in this witchcraft, it doesn't matter how many doctors come from the outside world to tell them this witchcraft does not exist. If everyone in your life believes in this, you will also believe in it. It's not really an answer to your question, but it kind of highlights the difficulty when you're trying to change beliefs and change actions to try and save lives. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're also over time, so I think we're going to end there. There's going to be some food and drinks for you waiting outside, and I would just like to thank you for sitting here in the very end. Give an applause. And I'm just going to give the word to Sissel Roakwan, which is the LEVE director, who would like to have a few words.
I would just like to thank you all. Thank all the panelists and speakers and the organizers. And I've been sort of scribbling and listening to see if I could come down with 4 take-home messages from all of these. Then I need my glasses because I can't, if I say 4, I can't remember. But I think what I take from the last session is that there is indeed value in looking bottom up. Go for stories, experiences, and all that is happening underground as evidence. There's value in doing that. This is connected to my second point, is that we should really start to have a very clear eye for what counts as evidence and what kind of evidence is acted upon. We had this beautiful presentation early this morning showing us that loads of information and evidence exists that we do not really act upon. We also had clear messages this morning that you never should really shy away from complexity. And I think nobody has shied away from complexity today. I mean, clearly we are into thinking broader, deeper, and more challenging that we have done. And really also trying to connect all the levels, the global, the national, and the local. And then I was also taken by this, that youth should claim their space. I mean, you should not take for granted that it's given you, and you should be aware when it's taken away from you. And lastly, keep asking questions over and over again that might have a different answer than you could anticipate. And then I would like to say thank you to Freya and Birgit. Where did she go? Wow. No, well, we can't, I'll wait. But, oh, yes, maybe she was hungry. Okay, Freya, I'm going to thank you. I'm going to thank Freya and Birgit for organizing this wonderful, wonderful afternoon. I mean, I think you have done a great job. And we all know, we who have done this, how much work lies behind all these details that are going. It's been a fabulous evening. And I have a present for you from sort of the Livelihoods Network that is called Reimagining Global Health. So you can go, it's Paul Farmer, it's Jim Kim, it's Arthur Kleinman, and Matthew Basilio. And then you can sit down and think if these guys can reimagine or if we need some new stuff. I'm not. Here you are.